morning, Patrick. Welcome on board, Mr. Van Hoof. You can do it, PVH. You're so close to your daily goal of 10,000 steps. These are just some examples of words spoken or written from companies and organizations that want to personalize the experience. And as human beings, we love being addressed by our names. We like it so much, in fact, that warm, fuzzy feeling, that we are 60% more likely to do repeat business with a company that addresses us simply by name. And unlike physical products, which we could customize based on individual preferences, which was usually really expensive because it's mass-produced, in the world of digital, we can easily customize and even personalize. For me, I'm going to talk about, well, not going to talk about the entire 20 years, but I've been doing personalization in the digital realm for about 20 years now. And I'm going to talk about some current trends, some considerations about the future, which takes personalization not just on the screen, but to the third dimension and the fourth dimension. So let's start with some of the current trends, but before we go there, I want to take you on a journey of my past. So how I got hooked by personalization on the web. It was 1995, and I needed a topic for a class presentation. So I asked as a lost teenager, I asked my grandmother, who was my life coach and source of inspiration, not to mention the most tech-savvy 70-year-old you've ever seen, about what I should be doing. And she said, "Petter," which was her nickname for me, "the future is all about the Information Superhighway." I said, "Whoa, that sounds amazing, right? Information Superhighway." And that was her way of describing the World Wide Web. And I already had a computer in 1995, but I wasn't online. So got myself one of those dial-up modem thingies, that make a lot of noise for too long, and then dial into the web so you can have a connection. And I was hooked instantly. Not because of the sheer scope of available information that you can access from any point, right? But mostly that mobility element, that depending on where you are, you can still access certain information. And the idea that you can contextualize that based on where you are was already something that was on my mind when I was, well, at the time, 14, 15 years old. And I had all kinds of ideas of what I should do with that kind of power. And when the mobile phone arrived, I got it in 1998, I think. It was a Nokia, like everybody else in the world. And the idea there was, okay, what can I do that leverages both desktop internet as well as the mobile phone, text messaging at the time? And I wasn't going to tell the story, but just based on the previous presentation, I thought it would be fun to mention it anyway. Now, don't judge me. But my first idea for this was to have a platform for opening lines. So it's kind of like having openinglines.com. And this was at the age of 16, 17 that I thought of this, which was really cool. The idea there was that you would leave your phone number, you would have an account, and you would select categories of topics that you would find interesting. And then on a specific time or day, you would be sent a text message with some interesting thing to say to someone where you were at. And then the business model there was, hey, how can we make this more contextual, more interesting, is to include information that you could use about nearby things that you could do together, like go to the cinema, and you would have information about that movie. And so it was pretty closely tied already at the time. It wasn't serving a big need, of course, which is what you find out after making these types of things. And it took a couple of years for me to really hone in on the thing that needed personalization most, which was the homepage experience. I'm talking late 90s. We were all using Google, which wasn't personalized at the time. There was no accounts, there was no Gmail. Or startpagina.nl. Who remembers startpagina.nl, right? Yeah. And that was pretty much just a collection of links in categories that you could click on. And it was the entire web laid out for you on your homepage. And you don't need the entire web all day, every day. You just need it for the stuff that you want to do online. And so I created something called Completia, which looks like this. The idea was you have a single logon, and then on your right mouse button, after you log in, you have a customized set of icons. And then you could use the right mouse button to go directly into your email inbox, or your text messaging account, or your preferenced news source. If it looks familiar, right? The idea there was that we can make this work on a smaller screen size, which was one of the huge limitations of text links. It's like start backing up .NL on a really small screen doesn't work. The other thing was you can't scale internationally based on local language. If you have a local language web link, right, how can you then scale beyond that? But the move towards mobile was the most important one. And of course, once we had Gmail accounts, then Google eventually also created their Chrome homepage. This was the time difference. This is not to say that I was amazing in 2001. There's just a time and place for everything. And obviously, we needed the mobile phone experience before we embraced that kind of contextual behavior. Parallel to this, as one of the previous speakers noted, we had the rise of social networking. So here you can see almost every, I think this is US data, like everybody is pretty much online, and whoever is online in the adult population also has at least one social network that they're a part of. Now, this also is a way to personalize your experience, and also to share your experiences with others. And as a human being, we want to do both. Right? We're selfish, and we're really social. And how do you combine those two? So this is building on what has been said previously. Here you can see what happens to our view of the world based on the Facebook algorithm and the sharing of content by our friends. So instead of having a broad perspective of cross-cutting content, we focus more on what we like, what we agree with, and the people we care about that think the same thing. So in a way, when it comes to content and viewing the world through news, it's a big topic right now, we're living in a little bit of a bubble. Now, how small is that bubble, and is this a real problem? And at one point, does this become a real problem? In recent years, in my previous work, I was involved with a lot of the screen-based digital experiences and how to remove friction and make it personal in the process. This included, for example, video streaming. So creating a frictionless experience for people to get the content that they want and to get some sort of recommendation engine going. And you can provide feedback to the system, and you can easily see what might be interesting to you to watch. Now for Netflix, we know that the end goal is that you can turn on a screen, and you would see on the screen what you would want to see at that time, at that place, based on your mood. Now think about that for a second. Right? It's not up to you what you want to select to see. So the question is whether or not we will actually accept that. But that's the direction we're going in, to make it as easy for us to view the content we want to see as possible. Now, how do you balance that with the commercial interests and our interests as creative beings to diversify or go beyond our comfort zone and discover new things? Discovery is a big thing. In onboarding now, if you start a new subscription service, you get all kinds of questions, and you can make selections and shortlists, and based on that, they can sort of profile you and find out what you want and get you into the experience as fast as they can. Here's another example of a contextual design for a smartphone maker that we did for their new operating system. So this was supposed to be natively contextual, which means that it's not in the app itself, it's in the operating system, that it would understand where you are, what's going on, not just to sort of let you know or switch to different modes, but to foreground the things that you would find interesting to do at that moment, at that place. So maybe you use different apps, or you have different routines when you're on the subway, and the phone would instantly sort of serve you with those examples or those services if you switch to that particular mode. Then there's the world of bots, AI-driven bots. Now, it's pretty much still a Q&A. You ask a question, you get an answer. It's used for customer service. But you can think beyond that. The social media platforms, they think highly of these types of messaging services. Why? Because as AI develops and as they learn more about you, we can anticipate needs. So that's what we refer to as anticipatory design. You create services for needs that people haven't expressed yet. Here's an example, I'm not sure if you can read it or if it's pixely, but of Facebook, for example. Facebook's Jarvis, which is their AI experiment from Zuckerberg, would know that your laundry machine breaks down before you know it, and they can either make the decision on what to replace it with, or they can provide you with 3 options based on your lifestyle, the brands that you like, the types of expenditures that you have. And they can have a pretty good guess at what you probably would like to have. So depending on regulations, they can make that decision, or they need to offer you a choice. But they remove the need for any kind of browsing proactively. So you're no longer a user of the web, you're being served. And most people here probably know the term user experience, and that's almost obsolete. We go to human experience, the proactive serving, which is the reversed web. No browsing, you belong to 1, 2, or 3 platforms, and all of the services with all the companies are right there and intelligently. Now that's scary, in a way, because we don't really own that data, even though it's our data, and of course you can have access to it. But I think that combined with AI, we should have something that's much like the different settings you have in a car. If you drive a sports car, there's different modes, right? Then depending on the mode you select, it's either comfortable to drive or it's more racy, as you see here. This is on the steering wheel of a Ferrari. And you can select a comfortable drive, sporty, or even turn traction control off, which means that you're pretty much like on a circuit, right? You slip and go like this. We can do a similar thing for AI, where we either select to be supported in life, give me suggestions, I will make decisions myself, but enhanced decisions. Enhanced fully can be, okay, I don't want to make decisions in these areas of my life, or up until this amount. I don't really care what you do. You know me better than I know myself. Buy the things I need, optimize for me somehow, somewhat, and I have control over some of those things. Or you optimize your life fully, efficiency-driven. You know what I want much better than I do, and I just want to make the most of life from an efficiency perspective. Now, is that what we want from life? To live the most efficient life possible? They have all these how-to books, like Tim Ferriss and Tony Robbins, and I like all those guys, and I'm a big fan. But the question is whether or not that should be the focus, to make the most of your time in terms of efficiency and effectiveness. To be human is to make mistakes. To be human is to be unsure. To be human is to relate to other people in a way that surprises you. So in a way, we want that predictability, but we also don't want it. We want to be surprised. And how do you balance those two? Now, in the future, I've worked on some of these experiments to figure out what might be coming and how can we personalize our worlds in the third dimension. And this has been going on for a while, if you think about it. So in gaming, it's really common for people to fully immerse themselves, and you are part of this digital reality, even though it's on a 2D screen, or it has been for a while. And even in that area, you can approach your collective experience or your shared experience differently, as Nintendo did with the Wii. So they used the third dimension off-screen to bring people closely together. So you would have more fun in playing these games, even though you're immersed in a digital reality. So this is actually a way to combine both a personalization, but a shared experience. The next step for this is VR. You've all seen those images of people wearing goggles and being isolated. So you're together, but you're alone. Now, that's not really terrifying in and of itself, right? They're still standing right next to each other. They can still be next to each other in this virtual reality. But it's something to think about, like how should we shape that offering? Oh. Here we see Microsoft HoloLens and the game Minecraft that was developed, of course, for mobile phones and normal screens, but taken into the third dimension. Now, this is really interesting. If you think about what's possible here, you can augment reality with anything that you want to see, or anything that companies that know everything about us would like us to see. So it's still reality, but with some sort of enhancement or alterations to it. If you take that one step further, we can think about having some sort of projected capitalism, where everybody has, it's pretty much like what we do now, but where everybody has white IKEA furniture. And you can project anything on top of this. You don't actually need to buy it. It just needs to look real. And of course, all our other senses need to be convinced as well. So you need some haptic feedback, is what you feel when you touch something. And they're already working on that as well. So you can touch a fake object and it feels real. Can you then distinguish reality from the virtual world? Not so sure. Then there's this guy. He's working on a neural lace, a direct neocortex connection to the web. You might not even need a table anymore. You can just see that kind of reality directly from the brain with the information we get in the cloud. He's already said we somehow live in a simulation, much like in the Matrix. Maybe that's true. Maybe this is all constructed in some way, but at least we can create that own reality ourselves once this becomes feasible. And my proposal, my idea for this is to, again, much like the settings for AI, to have some sort of control over who sees your reality. Now, Facebook does that, or allows you to do it with what other people can see. I think you should control who should see your reality, and you should have these settings independently of one of these platforms. Maybe you want to share it with someone, maybe you want to share it with all your friends, or your family, or keep it to yourself, but that's an interesting way to approach the virtual reality. Now for the exciting stuff. I was an MIT student a couple of years ago, and I was fortunate enough to walk around labs like the Media Lab and get involved with some of these research projects, and they're really focused on the physical parts of digital, which is, again, beyond the third dimension. It's the fourth dimension. The physical realities that can change over time, programmed or through interactions with people. I'm going to show you 3 examples of where that's headed, or that should illustrate where it's headed. This is the first one. 4D printing. It means having a pre-programmed shape change built into this stick of material. And then you add energy to it. And based on that energy, it transforms itself into that pre-encoded shape. In this case, the energy element is just water. Of course, this is sped up. This is 75 times the regular speed, but it shows you that it can take a shape that's already been predetermined without touching it. This is another experiment using sodium acetate, which is the material you use to warm your hands when it's cold. So you flick the disc and it crystallizes, becomes warm, and it also becomes solid. So you go from a liquid to a solid and back by heating it up. What if you put that inside a material and you can move in between those states by warming it up or flicking that disc and starting that crystallization process? Then you can rebalance within that material, where the liquid is, and you can create all kinds of shapes and then make it functional again by making it solid. So you go from a chair to a table just by warming up the material, rebalancing, reshaping, and making it solid again. Think about that, huh? Or we do it in a more mechanical way. These are tiny cubes, 1 inch by 1 inch, 2.5 by 2.5 centimeters, with a flywheel and a magnet, or magnets on all sides. And you can create a whole bunch of torque by moving that flywheel, and then controlling to what extent, the kind of force that it would unleash to control where it would go. So it can even make those kinds of jumps. Now this happens at 2.5 by 2.5 centimeters, but imagine if this could happen at the molecular level. If you can make these kinds of changes, then you can change anything into anything. Now when we talk about these things, or we work on those experiments, we always look to Hollywood for inspiration. Science fiction to science fact. And there's an interesting example here from a interesting movie, which is kind of the end state that we're working towards. No, it's not Terminator. Everybody always goes there in terms of transformable, programmable matter. But nevertheless, something really over the top.
Transformium. That's what we're calling it.
Focus grouped, catchy, trademarked.
Yeah. This is the greatest advance in modern physics since the splitting of the atom. It's programmable matter. And now we've mapped its genome.
Aye.
Now you've mapped its genome.
Now we can begin to give it instructions.
This is extremely good. Watch this. We can change anything into anything.
Sensual almost, don't you think? You like music? The pill. Perhaps something a little more violent?
Oh my God, you've done it.
Not quite, but sooner than you think. Thank you for your time.